All right, so that's a really old commercial to introduce this lesson. I am not advertising for DirecTV, but I love that that commercial was made up of our first vocab word on our sheet. So let me talk about it. I'll let you write this down. Vocab word number 1 is conditional, right? The word conditional. A conditional is an if-then sentence. If you wait on the cable guy, then you get bored. If you get bored, then you start staring out the window. If you stare out the window, then you see things you shouldn't see. ... Then you attend your own funeral as a guy named Phil Shipley. Don't do that. So anyways, a conditional is an if-then statement. Any statement that can be written in the form if-then. Raise your hand if you've read the mouse books. If you give a mouse a cookie, then he'll ask for a glass of milk. If you give a pig a pancake, I don't know what the other part is to that one. So Laura Numeroff, great book series. Read them to my daughters all the time. These are things that are called if-then sentence. This is part of logic, and this is a very mathematical concept. So in the first, where it says term, you wrote conditional. Where it says notation, I want you to write if P arrow Q. If P arrow Q. Remember how I said mathematicians are lazy and we try to abbreviate at any time possible? So the arrow means then. From now on, if you see that arrow, that's the word then. If P, then Q. So P and Q are just parts of our conditional. We're just abbreviating them so that we don't have to say a whole sentence every time. Did you ever hear that phrase, mind your P's and Q's? I think it's from like the 1950s. Anyways, there's your P's and your Q's. There you go. Well, you can Google it. All right, let's move on. That is a conditional. Oh, we need an example. All right, so here's going to be our example. We just made it up. If I'm hungry, then I eat pizza. That's going to be our conditional. We're not deciding if it's true or false yet. We don't care if it's true or false yet. This is just an if-then sentence. It does not have to be true. If I'm hungry, then I eat pizza. Write that down in the example part. Example. Okay. Now, every conditional has 2 parts. And this is going to sound like you're in science class. I'll come back to that. Go, girls. It has 2 parts. A hypothesis has 2 parts. A hypothesis and a conclusion. So this is vocab word. This is term number 2. This is term number 3. Every conditional has a hypothesis and a conclusion. The hypothesis is called P, and the conclusion is called Q. So for number 2 in notation, you put P, and number 3 in notation, you put Q. The hypothesis is the part after the word if, and the conclusion is the part after the word then. So in our example, our hypothesis is, I'm hungry. Notice how I didn't put the word if. It's what comes after the if. So everyone in your example for number 2 put, I'm hungry. Are any of you hungry? In the example for number 3, put, is it I eat pizza? If I'm hungry, then I eat pizza? Yeah, it is. These are separate. All right. You don't put the then. Don't write then. So hypothesis, I'm hungry. Conclusion, I eat pizza. So you can break your conditional down into 2 parts. From the example, the video, the hypothesis was you wait for the cable guy. And the conclusion was you get bored. The if and the then are not part of the hypothesis in the conclusions. Yes, the notation will always be P and Q. Why didn't they choose H and C? Hypothesis and conclusion. Come on, right? Next word. Oops, I skipped one. The next word is Converse, just like the shoe brand. Converse, this is number 4. The P and the Q actually are lowercase letters. They are. Yep, like the shoe brand, Converse. When you hear Converse, I want you to think reverse. Converse, reverse. Converse, reverse. This one, you're going to reverse the hypothesis and conclusion of your statement. So if P, then Q becomes if Q, then P. Hey guys, you got to stop getting hung up on the notation. Because that's like saying, why didn't someone name point a different word? I'm really bothered by the word point being the word point. Why didn't they name it tissue? Why can't we call this a tissue? You're like getting hung up on what someone is calling these parts of a sentence. And you're really frustrated that you can't call them a different letter. Someone decided these are the letters, and then these are the letters, so that we can have a common language. It's just what they've been assigned. Okay? So, converse. If Q, then P. That's the notation. So, in our example, if I'm hungry, then I eat pizza. The converse would be, if I eat pizza, then I'm hungry. Remember, I'm not saying whether it's true or false. It does not have to be true to be a converse. It's simply a statement. If I eat pizza, then I'm hungry. All we did was take the hypothesis conclusion and we reversed it. Converse, reverse. Converse, reverse. If you wait for the cable guy, then you'll get bored. If you get bored, then you are waiting on a cable guy. You can change like the tense of the words and stuff, past tense, present tense, but switch the two pieces. Okay? Next word, we're on number 5. The next word is counterexample. A long word. You might want to break it up, counter, and then underneath example. Counterexample. So a counterexample is an example that shows a conjecture to be false. You guys probably use counterexamples all the time with your parents. Your parents tell you something, and you don't agree with them. You don't agree with their logic, and you try to find a flaw in their logic, right? You try to say, but what if, right? That's you coming up with counterexamples. If I'm hungry, then I eat pizza. What's a counterexample? You already said it, ramen. You're hungry and you don't eat pizza, you eat ramen. So, in your counterexample, put this in the example part. A counterexample is not a sentence. It's usually just a word. Oh, spicy ramen, that's fine. Yes, it is very unhealthy. So is pizza, sometimes. You can make whole wheat pizza with lots of veggies on top, though. That's what I make. Anyways, so your counterexample is usually one word. If a fruit is red, then it is an apple. What's a counterexample to that? Strawberry, cherries, right? One word. Notice how I didn't say a sentence. Well, another red fruit is a dragon fruit. Just one word will cut it. A counterexample, you might even want to write that down. One word or phrase. Oops, that's on. One word, sometimes it's a whole phrase. That looks like an F, but that's an S with the E overlapping it. Counterexample is when you prove it wrong. Here's the deal about a counterexample, though. There's no notation. Good. No notation. The counterexample makes the hypothesis true, but the conclusion false. So let me use my example again. If I eat a red fruit, then I eat a strawberry. A blueberry is not a counterexample because you need the beginning to be true and the end to be false. Does that make sense? We'll play more with counterexample later, okay? Flip your paper over. We are on the back. Dun, 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 dun. We're on the back. Number 6, The word is negation. Negation. Oh, does it sound like a certain type of food? Okay. Negation. Look, there's a symbol for that. There's notation. Are you so happy? A negation of a statement simply puts the word not in front of it. The symbol for not is a squiggly. Kind of like what you put over an equal sign when you want to make it congruent. But those are unrelated, completely unrelated. So, if my statement was P, the negation would be not P. So if my statement was, if I eat pizza, here's the example. My negation is, if I do not eat pizza. Ooh, it was if I'm hungry. It doesn't matter. As long as you understand that negation means you put the word not in front of it. So if your statement was, if I eat pizza, the negation is, if I do not eat pizza. Yes, Chisholm, yes. All right. Next word is inverse. In the inverse, you negate the hypothesis and conclusion. Inverse, the statement formed by negating the hypothesis and the conclusion. So we need to take our original sentence, okay? If I'm hungry, then I eat pizza. The inverse is, if I'm not hungry, then I do not eat pizza. That is the inverse of our conditional. The notation is right here. If not P, then not Q. If I'm not hungry, then I don't eat pizza. Do you guys ever eat when you're not hungry? That's the worst. I eat when I'm bored sometimes. I just stroll into the kitchen and I'm like, that looks good. I'll eat some popcorn. Okay. We're getting close, guys. We're getting close. Okay. This next word has a lot going on. Get ready. This is number 8. Contrapositive. Sounds like contraband. Contrapositive. Contrapositive. Write it down. Okay, thank you, Eli. We're almost there. Contrapositive, the statement formed by exchanging the hypothesis. Oh, someone did not change it. Whoa. Someone didn't change this. You have it already on your paper. Bad. It's when you negate the hypothesis and conclusion and exchange it. It's perfectly right on here. Sorry, someone didn't change that. It's perfectly right on there. Okay, so if not the conclusion, then not the hypothesis. Let's use our example. Ready? We're going to flip. We're going to reverse and negate. Reverse and negate. Reverse and negate. So, if I do not eat pizza, then I'm not hungry. So a contrapositive is like a converse and an inverse hybrid. It's both a converse and an inverse. You do both things to it. It's called a contrapositive. Yes, Dia, yes. 1 + 2 = 4. Does the order of the words matter? The order of the hypothesis and conclusion matters, but like I said, if you want to say, I am not hungry, or if I don't eat pizza, you're allowed to play with the English a little bit. But no, the hypothesis and conclusion, where those go, matters. But you can play with the English to make it sound right. All right, next word. This is in the wrong order. Don't look at that. This is number 11. Go to number 11, please. We'll do 9 and 10 tomorrow. 9 and 10 are not going to be on your quiz or the test. So 9 and 10 are just there to have some extra words. A biconditional, last one. So it's the conditional, that was our first word, but we're putting the word by in it. That's a statement that can be written in the form P if and only if Q. That's like saying, I eat pizza if and only if I'm hungry. I'm hungry if and only if I eat pizza. That's not a true statement, but that's what a biconditional is. So it's true whichever way you write it. I think here's the notation right here. Got to edit these notes a little bit. I will get an A on the test if and only if I study. I'm not saying that's true. Some of you can get an A on the test without studying. But that's an example of a biconditional. You can just write that example instead of the pizza one. I will get an A on the test if and only if I study. I'm going to keep going. If you need to leave, go ahead and leave. So let's go over, here are the 4 main types of sentences. Out of all those words, these are the 4 main types. So we have our conditional. If you wait for the cable guy, then you get bored. We have our converse. If you are bored, then you are waiting for the cable guy. I switch the hypothesis and the conclusion. Converse, reverse, converse, reverse. Inverse. So the sentence was, if you wait for the cable guy, then you get bored. The inverse is, if you do not wait for the cable guy, then you do not get bored. So inverse is, got your not and your not. And then lastly, contrapositive. If you wait for the cable guy, then you get bored. Here's the contrapositive. If you are not bored, then you are not waiting on the cable guy. You reverse and negate, reverse and negate. So here's all the notations. If hypothesis, then conclusion. If conclusion, then hypothesis. If not hypothesis, then not conclusion. And, oops, if not conclusion, then not hypothesis. So you're going to get to play with this a lot on your homework. You'll get to feel more comfortable with the words and more comfortable with moving these sentences around. That's an activity we're going to do tomorrow.